What's up guys, Max here with some impressions of a game I know a lot of you have been asking me about over the past while, and I did a couple of videos almost like 2 years ago, and it's POKKEN Tournament. Game recently came out just the other day, and I wanted to go over a few of my impressions playing online, figuring the game out, and overall what the hell is going on. POKKEN Tournament is an arena fighter made by the guys who made Tekken. One of the lead developers and one of the guys responsible for Tekken, Harada, is one of the lead dudes behind POKKEN, and there's a little bit of similarities to Tekken stuff in POKKEN. It mostly comes down to artistic elements, but Pikachu does have a few Dorias and other things you'd very much remember from the Mishima family from the Tekken games. But other than that, there's not a lot of similarities to the Tekken series because POKKEN is a traditional arena-style fighter. I'd actually compare this more similarly to other arena-style fighter games like Final Fantasy Dissidia, and I really don't have a lot of experience with arena-style fighters, so it took me quite a bit of time to figure out what the heck I should be doing in this game, and how to conduct the mechanics that the game presents to you in a tutorial that takes almost an hour to complete. There is a whole bunch of mechanics that are present in POKKEN that you have to learn to kind of understand, but once you kind of get the hang of it, and if you're presented with situations where, oh, that's right, I should totally be using the counter state for this type of situation, you are pretty good. It might seem a little daunting at first, but it's honestly not that bad. But it's a little funny considering it's like technically a casual game targeted towards the Pokemon audience, but at the same time has really competitive elements. It's an interesting mix match between the few. In regards to the combat itself, there's a lot of very rock, paper, scissor elements between grabs countering counters, physical attacks countering grabs, and very many other things that tie into this whole RPS feel of the game that's on the surface level. The biggest thing is the switching between two different modes that you're going to be fighting in, which was field mode and duel mode. And field mode's kind of like a projectile zoning thing where you throw projectiles at the opponent, you do a little bit of damage or engage in a specific attack that converts you into duel mode where you don't have the 360-degree running that you normally would have in arena-type fighters, and it focuses more on kind of like 2D combat in that situation. You can also switch back between these two different modes at several times between the fight, and some characters are much better at their field mode for like range and zoning than they are at their duel mode because your abilities, your moves do change between these two different modes. Now that's enough about the game itself in regards to its mechanics. Overall, POKKEN being an arena-style fighter for me personally did take that little bit of time to figure out. I did eventually figure it out when online was getting totally destroyed by a lot of people because the habits that I was learning in the offline environment is a little bit different than online. I heard a lot of really damn good reports of the netcode being amazing in this game, and after like my first few matches figuring out what I should be doing in an environment versus a person was a lot different than I thought it would be. And it was a little bit weird, mostly because the simpler combos did a lot more damage than the more complex combos, and even though the more complex combos were really cool looking, they generally really weren't worth it, at least with the character I was using, which was Blaziken. Pokemon isn't a series that I'm naturally attached to by any means, and I specifically was trying this out because a lot of people were requesting me to, but there's not really any characters in POKKEN that super scream to me, but I can see why people would absolutely love this game. If you like Pokemon or ever have been a Nintendo fan by any degree, this is the game for you. There is going to be a huge competitive element to this game. It's going to be at EVO, and there's a lot here to offer for people that are actually looking forward to a Pokemon-style actual fighting game, but there's not a whole bunch of content in the game right now. It's like not really Street Fighter V-ish, but it does have a story mode which you go through the League system. It does have a versus CPU mode. There's no traditional arcade ladder or anything like that, and the online is amazing in one regard that is specific, and it's freaking matchmaking. You find matches so damn fast in POKKEN, it's incredible. I swear you can play up to 4 to 5 games in the span of 10 minutes. It's that damn awesome, and it's one of the things that's always bugged me with fighting games. I've always had this problem where it takes a lot of time to find a match in between those matches and going back to menus. POKKEN does an amazing job at getting you into the fight as soon as possible, and it's brilliant. However, some of the online play was a little bit discouraging for me. I was running into a lot of laggy matches. Some were fine, and then some were laggy, and it does feel a lot like the netcode that's presented in a game like Smash Bros. 4, which does make a lot of sense because it is a very similar development team over at Namco. And the one thing I was curious about is that a lot of people were telling me the net play's so good for me, it's so good for me, which made me very curious if there was something wrong with my connection because my other fighting games run totally fine. I ended up busting out my router that's able to categorize me in a specific ping limit to allow me to only match up to people with certain pings, lower pings and higher pings, and lo and behold, when I busted this thing hang out and set myself to 50 ping or lower, I was finding people that had consistently good connections. However, after that, we all know that low ping matches should run well and run pretty good in fighting games. I set it to like 100 ping to 200 ping, and this is where you can kind of test the netcode of some games, and this is what I was kind of worried about. The matchmaking in this game, especially in ranked, is kind of all over the place in terms of how it matches you with people, and I was getting a lot of different degrees of connections, which is why I was getting some funky ones, because when I specifically targeted the pings of higher people, it was running pretty damn rough. A lot of input delay between 10 to 15 frames of all of your inputs, and that was kind of extremely frustrating when you're running around in field mode as you're trying to dodge a huge amount of projectile attacks from the majority of the characters in the game, because in field mode you get a lot of projectiles, and me playing Blaziken, which is a character that actually has to get in and doesn't really have a good projectile game, was pretty frustrating, especially with the delay and consideration. I actually was having the most fun with POKKEN, just figuring out the combos I could do with a character and what was possible, and finding a shocking amount of depth in something more than I thought I would be discovering with this game. I actually really enjoyed POKKEN for the reasons I wasn't expecting I would enjoy it. I wasn't expecting to like the characters too much because I'm not a huge Pokemon fan by any stretch of the imagination, but when it came to the online, I was thinking it would be pretty functional, and it does work well in most regards, but just the worry of the next match being a zoning character that I'd have to like avoid their projectiles for a huge majority of the game just to get in and do damage, especially with a whole bunch of input delay because of the lag, was a little demotivating by the end of the night. However, I still have not played the offline versus mode. I do think that this game was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, but at the moment there's a couple of things that are preventing me from going back, notably characters that I really care about, and online play where you don't have to worry about your delay when it comes to dodging attacks and getting in and doing combos. Either way, POKKEN is like a freaking must-have. If you're a minor Pokemon fan, if you're a Smash Brothers fan, I highly recommend this game. And if you're an arena fan, it's also very good as well. As I said, I haven't been big into arena fighters at all, so it took me quite a bit of time to actually get used to this, upwards to like 2 to 2.5 hours, which is a long amount of time for a fighting game for me in general. But when I got to that point, I was really enjoying it, and then you have to go online and you find out the way you actually play people online is to kind of throw out these ridiculously unsafe attacks in a lot of situations because punishing them is a little bit hard with delay. That's where it was kind of like dropping me off a little bit. Either way, I'm sure you guys have a lot of good experiences with POKKEN because many people have been telling me the netcode is really good. The one thing I will tell you to check is that if you start a match, find out how much time it takes from you pressing your shield button and actually watching the shield appear on the screen. And that'll give you a pretty good idea of how much delay there was in the match, or there is going to be, because that's the primer I was using for some matches, and it was getting pretty rough towards the end of the evening. As always, dudes, thank you a ton for watching. Thank you for hanging out. POKKEN is out now if you want to check it out. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.